If you were listening to Fox News just a few minutes ago, there was a story that mentions Ammon Bundy is appealing the decision of the court. The court says that Bundy and his cohorts are flight risks. In other words, that if they're released, that they will somehow disappear from the United States. Where, pray tell, would they go? Just about every country now in the world has an extradition treaty with the good old USA, and I'm sure that these people really aren't sitting atop a huge stack of cash right now that could fund their lives wherever they would go afterward. Most of them are people who are struggling and have been struggling to eke out a living, especially in the regulatory age that we happen to live in. I was doing some reading about government regulations this morning. The EPA is looking to try and become the local zoning agent. That is, zoning regulations, because these are not mentioned in the Constitution, have always been left up to local governments. But now the EPA is trying to get its tentacles into local communities in order to take over that, telling you that, well, we have to do this because we have to protect the waterways of the USA. In other words, there's a mud puddle down the street, and if you build something here, it might be a little bigger. So we can't allow that because that runoff is, of course, going to destroy the planet. 8 minutes after 9 o'clock. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. So here you have Bundy and all of the rest. They will be sitting, apparently, in locked cells until they go to trial. They have not killed anyone. They have not even attempted to kill anyone. And yet they are facing a situation where they don't have any bail because, well, they're being treated like a group of killers. We brought it up in the last hour of the program. You have people, this Michael Brown character out of Ferguson, Missouri, who was treated like a saint by establishment media in this country after he tried to kill a police officer and the police officer defended himself. That's considered okay. A caller mentioned it on air last week. The mayor of Baltimore, Maryland, let these people go out and burn down drugstores in half the city and damage police cars, and they throw rocks at officers, and they're allowed to do that so they can get it out of their system. A group of guys driving to a public meeting, on the other hand, they have to be stopped and they have to be harassed, and then one of them ends up dead. I was just looking at a video over the weekend, and it comes from a rancher who actually lives in the Burns, Oregon area. And he said, don't believe what the media tells you. He said, people out here, we're supportive of what's going on because we all know it can happen to us. 10 minutes now after 9 o'clock. You can reach our program by giving us a call. Telephone number 736-0300. That's 736-0300. Bill Colley with you on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. That, of course, the website means you can listen to us anywhere, all over the world, just by clicking on the Listen Live icon. So if you're a regular listener and you have to go out of town, you take your laptop with you. There you go. You'll be able to not miss anything that takes place here on the program. You're up next, and you're on the air.
Yeah, good morning, Bill. If you look at the aerial video of everything that happened there, when the guy lost control, went off the road, he got out of the car with his hands up. A terrorist came out of the woods and shot him in the back of the head from behind. This is all terrorism. What they're doing with the Bundys, it's all terrorism. You will not deny us. We'll do it. You'll do it our way, or we'll do the same thing to you. That's what they're telling us.
And thank you for the call. As I mentioned in the last hour of the program, they're calling Finicum a terrorist, and yet the mad mullahs in Iran are getting $150 billion to fund more terrorism, and just over the weekend gave medals to the men who captured our sailors who may have been supposedly wandering in Iranian waters, but I have my doubts about that. And all of that is considered okay. President Obama is traveling to Baltimore to attend a service at a mosque, and you've got imams around the country who are saying, no, this is not the mosque to go to because it's tied to terrorism. But yet, a hard-working, productive member of society is shot dead. You're up next. You're on the air with Bill Colley.
Last week I heard an account directly from a rancher whose properties, two ranches, were right next to the borderline of the Malheur refugee, whatever you want to call it. And he said when he had to go through a checkpoint because it was outside of the refugee center, and this is before this incident occurred that killed, Finicum. He said when he was there was a laser sight on him and his wife as he sat in his truck to just go through this checkpoint. And he owns property right next to it. He has every right in the world to go down this road. And if you heard him say it, and then he said this, he goes, I sure hope that the lady from the IRS, I can't think of her name right now, doesn't retaliate because I even said this. Now, if this isn't terrorism by them, I don't know what is.
Again, as I mentioned in the last hour of the program, a friend of mine said over the weekend, if they really wanted to capture these guys, let them go to the meeting, and while they're at the meeting, let the air out of their tires. Then they couldn't get away.
What about rubber bullets and tasers and, if you see the amount of laser sights that were on even Finicum as he was dead, and then the amount of bullets that are shot into the car. I don't know if you've heard about Shauna Cox and her account. She was in the back seat of the Finicum vehicle, and it's quite something. It'd be nice if you could get her on the program, whatever, it's your program.
Is she's still locked up, though, too? I believe that she's not been allowed to, she's been given no bail.
Well, I thought she was out, but don't, like I say, I'm not certain of these things. One more quick point, and I'll hang up. Apparently, Cruz and Rubio were asked about this, and either they don't understand or they or haven't researched it, because I would think that they would have a different conclusion if they understood it better. But they were on the BLM side, and that kind of thing is a little bit frightening. And I guess Trump was more open-minded about the whole thing than Cruz and Rubio. And it just, you see, this is what happens when people don't totally understand.
And I thank you much for the telephone call, 736-0300, 736-0300. Some people call it civil disobedience. Other people are just plainly calling it criminality. But throughout our history, the fellows who pulled off the revolution against the crown, that was civil disobedience. They were breaking the law. It was insurrection. You've had this. You had people marching in the Deep South in the early 1960s. They were going to jail, and they were willing to get their heads cracked open. Why? Because they felt that this was something that, for all of the politicians who refuse to talk about this and say we've got to follow the letter of the law. I mean, I understand there's a reason for the law to be in place, but once again, no one was being harmed by any of this, and all of the talk coming from the government was along the lines of, well, this is dangerous, we have to protect people. But nobody was threatening anyone. And so you look at it and you say to yourself, it's civil disobedience is good if you're on one side of the political spectrum, but it's wrong if you're on the other side. I haven't yet figured that one out. Maybe someone can help me. You're up next. You're on the air on News Radio 1310, KLIX.
Well, hello. One of the things that gets me about this whole thing is that they're supposed to have been given all these powers, these cops and feds, for our protection. I'm sorry, but I don't feel safe when I have a big, giant, razor blade toothed grizzly bear trying to cuddle me. I mean, my God, they murdered the man, like when they used rubber bullets. The guy was right, the last caller. I mean, it's shocking.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the telephone call. And again, that number 736-0300. My take on this is, and I heard that, he nearly ran down an agent. But I watched the video. Now, I cannot. Some people say they see a muzzle flash, and that's why he was reaching for his left side, is that he had been shot. I cannot see the muzzle flash. My apologies if you think that I'm blind, but I'm pretty close to it. On the other hand, the fellow who supposedly was nearly hit was jumping in the path. Don't get in the way of a moving object. This 5,000-pound object is coming down the road. Stay out of the way. We have another caller with us. You're up next. It's 9:16, and you're on the air with Bill Colley on Top Story.
Hi, Bill. Bill, when I used to live in San Diego in the summer when they had bullfights, I used to go to bullfights, and one day the picador was ruining the bull so that the bullfighter could have it easier. People started throwing bottles. The little girl got hit, and later in the San Diego paper, I read where she died. Over in Jefferson, Missouri, those people were throwing urine-filled bottles at the police, and those bottles could have had AIDS, it could have had hepatitis and all kinds of things, and nobody in the media was ever concerned.
No, and I thank you much for the telephone call. This is this is why I'm not going to completely go out and indict law enforcement on this one without hopefully getting some more facts, is because, they're on the receiving end of this generally, and usually the media attacks them for thinking that they should just stand there and take it. But again, this situation in Oregon, I look at the video and I just say, why did it have to happen? Because that notion that they could have just, let the air out of their tires at the public meeting and then just said, all right, you're coming with us, if you really had to arrest them. And again, no one was in any danger prior to any of this. This is like going into a room where everyone is quiet and then throwing kerosene around saying, aha, it's dangerous, and then lighting a match. You're up next. You're on the air. It's 9:18.
Yes, I just thought that your listeners ought to know that last month I talked to 2 residents of Burns, Oregon, and they had a lot of interesting information to share. And one of the things that they shared with me was they acted upset and uptight, and I said, well, who are you afraid of? And they said, we are afraid of the government, not the occupiers. And the government had come in and taken over their town, and the sheriff also isn't innocent in this. They were concerned about some of the actions of the county sheriff, and so I just thought people ought to know that.
I thank you for the call, and I learned just last week that he was not elected. He is an appointed sheriff. He will still have to face the voters if he intends to run for another term. 9:19, Bill Colley with you. Chris Anderson going to be joining us in just a few. We're going to talk some fun stuff. We're going to talk a little bit about the planetarium and the Herritt Center. That's on the way in just a few minutes on the program. It's 23. Also wanted to tell you about our good friends at High Desert Meat Processing, where they process one animal at a time. What you bring in is exactly what you're going to get back. Darren Van Horn, the owner of High Desert Meat Processing in Twin Falls, he's been at this over 30 years. Visit High Desert Meat Processing on Facebook, and you can check out the reviews of customers. Or you can give High Desert Meat Processing a call for all of your wild game and your domestic processing needs, 734-9949. High Desert Meat does in-house smoking. Nothing is shipped out. Specialty meats, jerky, salami, summer sausage, pepperoni, breakfast sausage, brats, hot dogs, and much more, USDA approved. Darren works closely with local beef growers and their programs to ensure quality meat. 734-9949.